Hi class, in this video we're starting with a discussion of stress and illness. So to begin with, before we get into type A, type B, if the reactions that make up your stress response are chronic, or if they are usually more than the normal range, then it can lead to wear on your body. It starts to accumulate. So if someone is exposed to high levels of stress hormones, like cortisol, they might become vulnerable to infection, to different diseases like cancer, because that immune system functioning is weakened. And there's a whole type of disease that talks about this. They are psychophysiological disorders. Those are ones that are physical disorders or diseases whose symptoms are brought about because of stress or emotional factors. So you can get sick because of how much stress you have, what your psychological state is. Certain diseases are a part of this. For example, cardiovascular diseases can potentially be psychophysiological disorders. You can have, heart disease, like chest pain. It's called angina. That can be because of stress, not always, but it can be. Hypertension, which is high blood pressure, is related to stress. And a big area that is connected with, especially cardiovascular disorders, is because of your personality type. And the way this was figured out was someone named Meyer Friedman. His last name was Friedman. And he was at the doctor's office and realized that at the heart doctor, the chairs in the waiting room looked different. They were like worn at the armrests, more so than in other types of doctors. And he's like, I wonder if people here are more stressed, like gripping the hand or the hand rests more than people who have to see other types of doctors. And so he found that people who are prone to heart disease tend to think, feel, and act differently than people who are less likely to get heart disease. And this is where the type A, type B difference came about. So type B personalities are people who are more relaxed. They're more laid back. Type A personalities are the people who are more prone to heart problems. They tend to be intensely driven workaholics who are preoccupied with deadlines. They always seem to be in a rush. They're aggressive, and it feels like they're always struggling to achieve more and more with less time. People who have this type A personality tend to be excessively competitive. They always have this sense of time urgency. They're impatient. They tend to be hostile towards others. And they're more prone to heart disease. Now, one complication they found was that not all studies found a link between type A and heart disease. So they looked within type A personalities to see what specific factors in the type A personality, what certain behavior patterns are associated with these problems. And they found that the big thing was that anger and hostility. Anger and hostility is the most important factor in the development of heart disease. And it's not just, okay, I can suppress my anger, I can still have it as long as I don't show it, I'm fine. No, suppressed hostility as well elevates your chance of heart disease. So that hostility, whether you try to keep it in or express it, is going to be correlated with heart disease if you're in that type A personality. So you can have, and sometimes they actually call it hardy personality instead. If you have that like drive to do well and to succeed and to accomplish a lot, but you don't have the hostility that tends to be correlated with type A, sometimes they'll call you a hardy personality instead of type A, and you are not more prone to heart disease in that case. Another factor connected with stress and illness is negative affectivity, which is a tendency to experience distressed emotional states involving things like anger, contempt, disgust, fear, and nervousness. So it is also linked to the development of hypertension and heart disease. They did a study for looking at 10,000 middle-aged civil servants in London. The UK has a nationalized health system, so they were able to more easily study these large group of people. And they followed them for about 12 and a half years. And they found that people who earlier in the study scored in the upper third on a test for negative affectivity were 32% more likely to have experienced heart disease, heart attack, angina, which again is that heart pain or chest pain, over the years of the study versus the people who scored in the lowest third for this negative affectivity. So how do you regulate stress? This is coping. Coping is your mental and behavioral efforts that you use to deal with problems relating to stress, including its presumed cause and the unpleasant feelings and emotions it produces. Lazarus and Folkman did a lot of research on coping, and they found that there are two fundamental kinds of coping. You can have problem-focused coping or emotion-focused coping. In problem-focused coping, you focus on the problem. You attempt to manage or alter the problem that is causing you to experience stress. If you are stressed because of your roommate, you go and get yourself a new roommate. If you are stressed because of your major, you change majors. So you address the stress by addressing the problem. So you're going to identify the problem, consider solutions, do cost-benefit analysis, and then choose the best option to help reduce the stress. If you're doing emotion-focused coping, this is when your efforts are to change or reduce the negative emotions connected with the stress, but you're not actually addressing the stressors. So this is going to be things like you avoid it, you minimize it, you're going to distance yourself from the problem, you're going to try to compare yourself with others in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. You might do a reappraisal, so you try to construe the stressor differently, but without actually, again, changing the stressor at all. So examples of emotion-focused coping, there's bad and good forms of it. So for example, if you are your roommate stresses you, so you just don't spend a lot of time in your room. You hang out other places instead. You avoid your roommate. You're stressed about your major, and so you just stop going to class and hope it goes away, but then in the end you're just going to fail. If you, once you're 21, if you drink to forget your problems, that's emotion-focused coping. Again, it can be good though. For example, my commute to McDaniel was an hour, which is a long commute to have to do every day. And it wasn't going to change. I couldn't do problem-focused coping. We weren't going to sell our house and move to Westminster. And so I started listening to Spanish podcasts to drive to and from work. So it wasn't just an hour stuck in my car. It was an hour where I got to practice Spanish. And so it was 2 hours a day of Spanish work, and that was great because I needed to learn Spanish. That would be emotion-focused, but a healthy form. If you can do problem-focused is the best because then the stressor's gone. If you cannot do problem-focused, then healthy forms of emotion-focused are good. But try to do problem-focused if you can. Another sort of psychological factor connected with stress is your perceived control. That's your belief about your personal capacity to exert influence over and shape outcomes. Your perceived control has major implications for your health and how happy you are. So perceptions of personal control are associated with a lot of different outcomes, like better physical and mental health, better psychological well-being if you have high perceived control, people with higher levels of perceived control tend to view their health as controllable as well. So they're going to make better choices to manage their health. They're going to do behaviors that help improve their health because they think they have control over how healthy they are, and thus they're going to be healthier. They hear that they're at risk for diabetes. Someone with low perceived control is going to say, oh, it gets everyone, nothing I can do. Someone with high perceived control is going to change their diet, exercise, and thus be less likely to actually develop diabetes. There are factors that help contribute to whether you have high or low perceived control. For example, people with lower income tend to have lower perceived control. If you think about it, people with lower income are more likely to have jobs where they are not the manager, they're not in control, and so they have less control over that aspect. That's more likely to sort of bleed into other areas of their life as well. So people with lower socioeconomic status tend to have lower perceived control and worse health outcomes. And people who just generally do have a lower job status also tend to have lower perceived control. One factor that connects with this is learned helplessness, which Mark Seligman created. Learned helplessness is the belief that you're powerless to do anything about a situation. And there has been some downsides to this learned helplessness research. This learned helplessness research started with dogs, like tying dogs up in a cage where the floor is electrified on half of it and tying them up in a way that they can't escape to the side that is not electrified. And so eventually the dogs just learn they can't do anything, and even if they're no longer tied up, they don't try to escape the shocks. They learn they're helpless. This research was also then applied to inmates in Guantanamo to help with the torture of inmates in Guantanamo, the psychological torture, to get them to be in that learned helplessness state and think they can't do anything to stop being tortured, to kind of just give up. So if you have basically negative life events and you don't think you can do anything to control them, it can lead to learned helplessness. It can lead to depression. A part of this learned helplessness and whether you develop it is making attributions towards your life events. You see them as internal or external. So this is because of who I am versus this is a situation based on what's outside of me. Stable, it's always going to be this way, or unstable, this is something that can change. Global, this will apply to every area of my life. Everything's going to be the same. Or specific, in this one area, I have a problem. If you make internal, let's see if I can do this, global, stable, and internal attributions, you are more likely to develop this learned helplessness. It's more connected with those aspects. The next thing to go over is something that can help with your stress. So we're going to focus on things that can help reduce stress. This will actually be the last slide. Social support helps. That's the soothing impact of friends, family, and acquaintances. They help give advice, they give guidance, encouragement, acceptance, emotional support, tangible support. If you have a lot of social connections, it reduces mortality. It reduces how early you die. In one study, men who were isolated, who didn't have a lot of social support, and women were more likely to die over the course of the study. For men, they were 2.3 times more likely to die in the study. For women, they were 2.8 times more likely to die during the study if they did not have that social support. So social support is really beneficial, and it's not just face-to-face social support, like especially, your first year at college, all your friends that you've had your whole life, probably not with you. So when you first start, you don't have a lot of face-to-face social support. You can get that social support via social media as well. When they looked at first-year students who didn't have a lot of face-to-face friends on campus, but who were still communicating through technology, you know, text, social media, WhatsApp, whatever, with their distant friends, they were less distressed starting out college than the first-year students who had stopped communicating, who didn't have that support with their old friends still. Another factor that can connect with stress is stress and discrimination. So people who are the victims of discrimination experience significantly more stress. It connects with several of the things we've talked about so far. If you are the victim of discrimination, chances are you are part of a people group that regularly gets discriminated against, and so it's something that's going to happen more than just one time for the most part. And so it is going to lead to potentially less perceived control. If it's something that you don't have control over when you're discriminated against, there's not much you can do to get it to stop. That's going to lead to stress. It can lead to that general adaptation syndrome that we talked about in the last video, where you're just always on edge, waiting for the next act of discrimination or microaggression, and then that can lead to negative health outcomes. And so people who are a part of a group that is regularly discriminated against, people who have high perceived discrimination, have higher rates of depression, as well as diseases like cardiovascular disease and cancer. And so if you are able to get some social support to feel you have a community that is going to protect you, it can help with that. Other ways to help reduce stress. Exercise helps. You can also use a relaxation response technique that was created by Herbert Benson. And there are 4 steps to this technique. The first one, you sit upright in a comfortable chair with your feet on the ground. Your body is relaxed. You have a quiet environment with closed eyes. You repeat a word or a phrase or a mantra to yourself over and over. And then you just let your mind focus on pleasant thoughts, like nature, how you feel so relaxed in the moment, whatever it is. Another great way to help reduce stress is mindfulness meditation. And so the last thing I'm going to put here is a small mindfulness meditation exercise. I have an old friend from college who is a mindfulness meditation teacher in Pittsburgh. He's kind of like a modern day Mr. Rogers. And so I had him make a short video for you all. And it's got 2 parts to it. The first part talks about some of the research that's really good with mindfulness meditation. I'm cutting that out of this video, but I am going to put the link for his YouTube video with that first part here, so you can watch that whole thing if you're interested. A lot of it is some of the stuff I've talked about already. What I'm actually going to add to this video for you to watch is the second part of that YouTube video, which is him guiding you through a mindfulness meditation activity. It's short. The good thing about it is it's something you can do like before a test. In your classroom, it's something you can do every day. And people who meditate every day are less stressed. It can change the way your brain functions so that it functions. I highly recommend meditating for 15 minutes a day, especially if you're a little stressed. And so I'm showing you this video so if you've never meditated before, you can see sort of what it looks like. And you'll have a link to the video so you can go back to it, save it on YouTube if you want to use his technique to meditate again in the future. But that is it for this video. Now watch the meditation.
So if you'd like to try this, find a comfortable position to sit or lay down. If you're going to sit, it's helpful to sit towards the edge of your seat with your feet planted on the floor. You don't want any pinched nerves or any circulation to get cut off. And then sit up kind of not uncomfortably straight, but like if you were to imagine that you were royalty, like a dignified posture, like, you know what? People should respect me. People should pay attention to me. Side note, they should, right? Because we're all worthy of that respect and dignity. So take a dignified posture and then just relax. Whew. If you're comfortable doing so, lift your hands up and let them fall down in your lap so you can find a nice comfortable place for your hands. And then softening your gaze, you can just look down at the floor, or you can even allow your eyes to close. With your eyes closed or looking down at the floor, noticing the feeling of your body as it breathes, as your heart is beating. Allow your attention to drift down to your feet. Notice what you're feeling in the tips of your toes. Any pressure, any heat. And shifting your attention from the tips of your toes down to the soles of your feet. Notice what you're feeling. Moving your attention now to the tops of your feet. Up through your ankles. Without forcing your attention, without shaming yourself if your mind has wandered. It will wander. It's normal. Gently guide your attention back to your ankles, noticing what you can feel in your ankles. Shifting your attention up through your shins and around to your calf muscles, up to your knees, noticing the sensation of your body in the chair, supporting your weight, up through your spine, into your shoulders. What can you notice in your arms, down through your elbows, forearms, into the palms of your hands? Shifting your attention now to your fingers and your fingertips. And bringing your attention up through your neck, your jaw, noticing if there's any tension there, allowing it to melt away as you shift your attention to your ears. Not what you hear, but what you feel with your ears. So your nose and your eyes up to the top of your head. With your eyes softened or closed, imagine that your entire body is being bathed in a light of love and acceptance and peace. Imagine that that light of love and acceptance and peace is shining from your own heart out to every other being on the planet, sharing that love that you have for yourself with everyone you meet. Raising your eyes and opening them if they were closed. I like to place a hand on my heart and just notice how I feel. Am I more relaxed? Am I more anxious? Both could be true. And if that was an exercise that you like, it's an exercise you could continue to practice on your own. You don't need me to guide you through it, but if you do like having someone guide you through it, I would suggest using any of those apps that I mentioned before, or reaching out to Dr. Phillips, or even watching this video again. But that was, just a few minutes. And in those few minutes, if you were to practice that every day for 8 weeks, you would actually grow new neurons in your prefrontal cortex. You would actually be able to decrease the size of your amygdala, and you would actually become more compassionate, creative, empathetic, able to regulate your emotions, and less reactive to stress when it presents itself. And I don't know about you, that sounds like a pretty cool thing. So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out to Dr. Phillips. And I can't thank you enough for paying attention to me. My name's Mark Williams. I'm a complete stranger to most of you, but I appreciate you giving me your time. And take care of yourselves. And remember, okay, this is important because we forget it when we get bogged down in the weight of school and grades. You, exactly the way you are, with or without doing a single assignment, you are completely awesome. Don't forget that, okay? Bye for now.